All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's expert led session on nonviolent communication in the workplace. And I'm delighted to introduce our esteemed speaker for today's session, Kuvam Mehta. Kuvam is a seasoned leadership consultant with a master's in leadership development and HR management from the University of Law, United Kingdom. With over 8 years of experience designing and facilitating workshops on team building, empathy, collaboration, self awareness, and conflict management, Kuvam brings a wealth of knowledge and expertise to the topic of nonviolent communication. In 2018, Kuvam co-founded the Global Citizenship Foundation, where he has worked on empowering youth leaders globally, focusing on education for sustainable development and youth leadership. This experience underscores his commitment to fostering positive change through effective communication and collaboration. Additionally, Kuvam's work with the Chief Minister's Office of Haryana and his involvement with the Gandhi Fellowship has equipped him with a deep understanding of the challenges and opportunities in education and public service. Kuvam's leadership philosophy centers on conscious self awareness, guiding individuals and teams toward meaningful, personal, and organizational change. His expertise in nonviolent communication is particularly relevant in today's world, where effective communication is essential for forming harmonious relationships, both personally and professionally. Please join me in welcoming Kuvam Mehta to the stage.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Maria, for that lovely introduction. Um, that was very kind of you to put it that way. Now, looking at that, I'm just thinking about myself in a very different way right now. But yeah, I hope everybody can hear me all right. Let me just do that a little bit. Yeah. Okay, great. All right. So today is a very exciting day because we're going to talk about something which is very exciting to me personally. Communication, right? And communication is something uh, that is that is something that we're doing constantly with ourselves and with people around us, right? You're continuously having a communication. It could be with yourself, people around you, you know, any of that sorts. So before we start, uh, I would like to hear from you first, right? Before I start with my session. uh, in the chat, you could probably say, or you can also come on the stage and introduce, these couple of things that I want to ask. One is, how do you feel at the moment? And, what are you looking forward from the session? Is there something that you really want me to cover in this session? And where are you joining us from? Right. So just gives us an understanding of what are different cultural backgrounds, or what are different countries that people are joining us from, right? So it's open for anybody to come on the stage, put it on the chat. Uh, until then, I'll get my presentation. And I'm feeling very excited for this session. And I'm joining from Jammu. And my expectation around this session is that all of you be very participative. Yeah, I think I've got that right. All right. So we've got Srijita from Bangalore. Great, great. Zoya from Bahrain. Feeling happy. Happiness is a good state to be, yeah? Amazing. Maria, what about you? How are you feeling?
I'm feeling pretty good about this session. Looking forward to learning a lot, particularly in how to, communicate better, understand my own communication styles, and how that, affects my interactions with people in the workplace. So looking forward to what you have to share today.
All right, brilliant. Putting more pressure on me. That's nice. I'm just joking. That's it. All right, so amazing. So let's do this. To start the session, before we get into what nonviolent communication really is, like it says, it's a powerful framework. We'll get into the framework and all of that. What I want you to do is, I want you to think about a difficult conversation or a difficult situation that you're avoiding at the moment, or a recent situation that you've had and you've tried to communicate with the person and you've failed at it, right? So, think about that kind of a situation and what happened in the situation, what was the communication about, and what did you communicate to the other person. Think about the conversation that you had, and yeah, so feel free to put it up on the chat, or you can just raise your hand, and I think somebody from the backstage would put you on a conversation with me, and it would be nice to have that because then it would be a lot of fun for me personally. So yeah. Was I able to make sense? Give me a thumbs up if you feel that you understood what I said. So what we're doing is we're just looking back and thinking about a situation where we've had a tough communication with somebody, or we are trying to avoid a communication with somebody. And in that situation, how would you approach this conflict that you're having with that person? So what would be your communication style? What are you thinking about? What are you going to talk to them about? How are you going to approach them? Things on all of those aspects. All right. Anybody wants to just share it with the entire group, or I can talk about what I've been thinking about. So yeah. Yeah, I think Glory is on the stage.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Hello, my name is Glory. I'm actually from Nigeria. And you asked the question to think about the conversation we've had before
Mhm.
and think about what we would have done differently about the conversation, right? If I
No,
got
I'm
that
saying,
right.
or what you've done in that conversation. If it did not go well, it went well. What did you do in the conversation? I'm just interested in that.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, about that, right now, I'm just going to think about the conversation I had like
Mhm.
yesterday with with some group of persons, and it was a team conversation anyways. And during the conversations I got to know that I was wrong at some points because of the delivery I was meant to do for a particular project task. But because it was not, I didn't get all the information needed to get my tax submitted the way it should be. So somehow I got this critical feedback, and that, in as much as it was critical, I took the correction from that and then um, did like a correction of my work and sent it back to the team, and then it was approved and taken to the next stage. So that's what I did last night. Yeah.
Okay. So in that conversation, my question is to you that when they were talking about your performance, right? Or when they're talking
Mm.
about your shortcomings in the team, uh, what were the things that were said to you? You can give examples to, like, you don't have to get into deeply into it, but on a broader aspect.
Okay.
Factual over there, how did you proceed?
Okay. Okay, so one of the things that was said to me was I was told, okay, that this particular work, it seems you don't understand the target, what's really expected to do. And I was like, okay, I'll need a bit clarification on what was the expected objective. And then the person speaking was the team lead, so he reiterated what he meant by what he wanted to be done. And then I understood better. I had to ask questions at some point because some of the points he
I'm
made
going to stop you. I'm
were,
going to stop you there. I'm going to stop you there. The first thing was that the person said that you not understood the what you need to do, right? Right?
yes, the objective, yes,
The object
of the
of that.
project.
Okay, great. So that is where I'm going to stop you. We're going to come back to this in the later half of the session, but I'm going to just touch upon it because, uh, when you look at that as a statement, what it would do is that it would make you a little bit defensive as an individual because it's saying that you've not understood the object of the session, right? So what,
Mm,
as an individual, what I would do would be like, oh, it's been on me, not it's been pointing on me, right? So I would just say,
mm,
no, I've not understood this bit, I've tried that bit, or I would say that, okay, can you help me understand it better, right? So there are different defensive strategies that you, and if you get into psychology of defensive strategies that individual uses, you'll understand what defensive strategy that you used at that moment. So a statement like that would trigger the defense mechanism of an individual thinking, right? Because that led to multiple questions from your end, was probably a defense mechanism that you were trying to use at that point in time. All right, great, amazing. Anybody else? Anything that they're avoiding at the moment? They want to have a conversation, but they're avoiding. Thank you, Glory, for that.
thank you.
Hello. Hi, Tulu. I hope I got your name right. Tulu, is that right?
Yeah, yes, yes, sir.
Yeah, you can call me Kubam. Yeah. So yeah, you want to share something?
Um, Personally, I believe you just made the comments I wanted to make. Um, this defensive mechanism in human, when someone is making you feel, or someone is trying to make you feel little of yourself, or at that moment is trying to give you some kind of correction, but with the manner and the tone is bringing up that correction, you just feel I have to defend myself at this moment.
Hmm.
Yeah, so that's what I was trying to explain.
Right. So okay, got it. So also the fact that you know all our emotions also come from the fact that we tend to get affected by these comments and these conversations, right? There's certain element within ourselves or certain feeling, emotion, needs that tends to get triggered. So when you look at non-violent communication as a concept, what it is trying to tell you is that in your general conversation that you're trying to have with people, right? What is happening is that there are these triggers that are there in these communication. Right? So how do you get rid of these triggers in your communication with people, right? What could be a trigger? Say somebody is coming late for meetings. So what would you say? A trigger would be you are always late for the meeting. right? The word always here is a trigger. And the person would say, you know what, I wasn't late yesterday.
Sure.
Now the conversation is going to go to a certain different element because the person used the defense mechanism and picked up a fact when they were on time to use it against your comment, right? Make sense,
Yeah.
right? So what you've done is by saying the word always late, you've made the person, triggered the person in a way that they have to use the defense mechanism for
I
you.
can't come for you.
All right. So you are you all with me? So what I want you all to do is I want you all to take up the situation that you have. I want you to think about different aspects in that situation and keep that situation throughout the session that we have today. All right. So whatever situation you picked up, whatever this conversation is, whatever this conflict is, that is difficult for you to have that conversation. Stay with it. I'm going to take you through this entire, matrix of non-violent communication, and I want you to apply it. So every time I talk to you about something, I'm going to give you 5 to 10 minutes to apply that to your situation. Okay. So what would be happen through that is that by the end of the session, we would be able to have an example of a communication that we could use in our situation. So that's my objective that would come out, and that process we'll be able to understand what non-violent communication is. Make sense? Yes, no.
Yes,
Okay.
sir. Yes, sir. It makes sense.
Okay, I'm getting a little bit thumbs up, so I think it's making sense to people. If what do we do if it doesn't make sense? So what do you use in that case? You're using thumbs up if it's making sense, but if it doesn't make sense, what do we use? Do you use hearts? Thumbs down is there's no option of thumbs down. I would have choose thumbs down, but there's a wow option. Wow. Yeah, so it can be a sarcastic wow. Yeah, let's use wow. You just did not make sense for that. All right. Okay. So, so when you look at non-violent communication, it has three distinct, I would say, very important attributes to it. Right. One is that it is driven by a lot of empathy. All right. So it basically encourages you and also the other person to deeply understand each other, listen to each other, and understand each other. Right. So it looks at that aspect of it. So that is the first, uh, you know, aspect. So it's an empathy driven approach, right? The idea is to look deeper, look at the other person's perspective rather than just simply defending one's own position. So the idea is to understand the other person better. All right. Now the second part is that it gives you a proper structure to have a, a communication when you're in a situation of a conflict. So imagine that you are in the situation of a conflict with a person, and it could be anybody. It could be at workplace. It could be at your private space as well. It could be somebody within your family. It could be somebody outside your family. It could be you know a colleague of yours. So it could happen with anybody, and you can use this approach at any given situation. So it is actually situation agnostic, right? So you can use it everywhere. So it provides a structured understanding. So you would have a structured process that you would be able to use. And also, what it does is that it also promotes, uh, you know, transparency in communication. It helps you being very transparent with the other person. And what it also requires is a lot of, and that is the most challenging part of this entire process of NVC, and that is building that kind of trust and having that kind of a conversation, right? So I'll get into that when we have a discussion on it, and if anybody wants to understand that, we'll get deeper into it. All right. So these are three things where non-violent communication really plays a very important role. But what exactly is nonviolent communication? Like we spoke about in the first slide, it's a framework, right? What exactly this framework is? Let's just look at that now. All right. So if you look at there are four components of a nonviolent communication, And an easy abbreviation, you can call it OFNR. I've just typed that in the chat. Uh, O stands for observations, F stands for feelings, need stands for N stands for needs, and R stands for request. All right. So now, any questions on this, on the four components of nonviolent communication? What do you think? What do you think? This actually is. I mean, a little bit of brief is mentioned, but what what do you understand by this? I want your comments. You can unmute yourself, come on the stage. If there are any raised hands, I can manage that. All right, Maria is on the stage. Yes, Maria.
Yes. So I have a question regarding the four stages of communication, right? Because it's been my experience that, at least on a cultural level, right, that certain forms of communication aren't necessarily taken very well, because you can go from observing what it is that needs to be discussed or what situation needs to be addressed to sussing out what the feelings about that situation are or could possibly be, right? And then identifying the underlying needs. It could be validation for the person or persons you're speaking with. It could be acceptance, and then the last stage, which is request, expressing what you would like in a clear and collaborative way. Um, I think my question is, do you think that some people just cannot be communicated with because they have such a one track mind that regardless of how clearly you explain your point, of how concise you make yourself, there's just no way to get across to them? And how would you go about managing such a situation, both at a personal and work level? Because, at least at the workplace, once you've done your 9 to 5, you go home, you're done with them, right? But now, when you're at a personal level, if it's someone you live with, if it's a parent, it's a friend, how would you deal with these situations, and how would you manage them going forward, especially if it's a long-term relationship, such as with a sibling or a parent?
Very interesting question, right? And in the question, the most interesting part, I want you to reflect on that, Maria, is that we are looking outward and not inward. Okay. At this point in time, when you look at the question, the entire question is about the other person. And even your understanding of OFNR was about the other person, that you are not able to do that. And your underlying needs are taken for granted by the other person, right? So I want you all to focus a little bit inward for this. Okay. Now, addressing the question that you put forward, it has a 3 point answer to in my head at the moment. One, that when you look at this entire framework or any kind of communication, it is only what you can do, right? You do not have the control of what the other person is going to do. The idea is what we are doing, it should be important that we are not triggering anybody with that. And it is important that we are able to do it with as much transparency as we can, right? Does that make sense? So it's about how we can improve ourselves in communication, how not others can improve themselves. We're not focused on that. We are focused on ourselves. So that's the first thing. Now, second, the context would change between a personal and a work communication, right? A work communication, even if you're having a tough time with somebody, is easier to manage because you can focus on the goal that you're set to achieve, right? So you can say, okay, leave this be. Let me just focus on what we are doing together. Whereas uh, a communication aspect at a personal level, they are very difficult to find shared goals, right? Within a shared goal with your sibling would be to live together, and that's what you're not able to do, right? So the idea is that it becomes a little bit more challenging, and it also is driven a lot by emotions. So that makes it a little bit more complex, right? But again, we're going to look towards ourselves, not the other person. And the third point to this, the first point was about looking inwards, right? And having this framework for ourselves. The second is about the contextualization between the work and the private space. And the third aspect is this framework does not guarantee you, or any kind of communication would not guarantee you 100% success. All right. The idea would be that it would make it better for you as an individual to say that, I have my conscience clear now because I'm able to express everything in a right way. All right. Now, how the other person perceives it, how the other person takes it is something that they need to reflect upon. Right. So at times there might be chances where you would have to say, okay, you know what? I want to leave this I've had this conversation. I don't see this relationship going forward. Let me just park it here. Let me just move on with something. Right. So it's not that you are doing something wrong because consciously you've tried your best and it's not happening. So sometimes you have to just let it go. Right. All right. So I hope I answered your question there and we were able to also look at that. Yeah. Anything?
Yeah. Yeah, just a final add-on from me is that I think for a lot of us, even in adulthood, it's a struggle to, step back from the people pleasing aspect of things and creating clear boundaries, because that is one of the aspects of communication, right? Being very open and honest about what it is that you expect, and then when your boundaries are stepped upon, then deciding that this is where things will end. So thank you for answering the question.
Yeah, but I want you also to think about it from a different perspective. I want to give you a different perspective there. So when you're looking at uh you know I see that as individuals we try to create boundaries, but we're not very good at maintaining boundaries ourselves, right? Because there's so much happening all throughout. We're having so many conversations with people. Somebody's entering our life, somebody's exiting our life, somebody's becoming very close, somebody's becoming, if one person becomes close to us, the other person is moving a little bit away because we have limited time, we have limited resources to give to each person in our lives. When a person gets married, they tend to spend more time with their significant other than their parents, right? And then that relationship changes. So I think it's a very complicated kind of a situation, right? So when you look at that as a situation, the perspective I want to bring in is that the idea is that boundaries are going to get broken. You are going to get in these difficult situations. It is how you deal with them, right? So in conflict resolution, we always say that you are bound to have conflicts. That's why you need to understand or need to learn the skill of resolving those conflicts, right? So in the same way, you're bound to have these difficult situations. NVC is a tool or a technique that you can use while you're having those difficult situations. All right. So
Yeah, thank you so much for that.
that's a little bit of perspective to just to give you there, to keep that as an understanding that because of this, it's not going to guarantee you 100% of you're going to have a very chill life and a very relaxing life. There's going to be no conflicts and very easy life.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. All right. Okay, I don't know where my presentation's gone. It's gone backstage. uh do you bring it up? Okay, it's here. New features. All right. Okay, any other question, anybody? All right. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to dig deeper into each of these. All right. And I want you to keep your situation in mind. I hope you all have a pen and a paper handy. because I want you to also experiment with that. Okay. And at the end of the session, I would share a PDF with the team who could then use this presentation and that PDF, and they would share it with you. All right. So let's look at observation. All right. Now, observation is something which is a lot of times underestimated or looked beyond. Like people don't actually look at it in a way, right? So when you're looking at observation, the idea is to have a very objective observation in situations. So imagine that something's happened, right? Uh, when that something has happened, what were the factual observations that were there? All right. So, for example, let me take up that people getting late for a meeting. You have a certain person who was late on Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, but they were on time on Wednesday. So when you are stating those observations, you have to say, you were late on three of the last four meetings that we've had. So that's a very strong observation, right? Which is very factual. All right. Second thing, which is very interesting, is that once that observation is obviously that something's happened, you formed your own judgment, you formed a story in your head, right? So the idea is how do you alienate yourself from that particular situation and look at it from a third perspective, and you have to keep your opinion away from that facts, so that what you get is facts at the end, right? So you have to remove yourself from that entire story and you have to see it from a third person's perspective. So the good way of doing it would be just write down everything that's happened and then just read it. That's a very powerful way of picking up observations. Uh, and every time you have a situation like that, it's very important that you understand what has really happened, right? So mindfulness is something that would really help you understand, okay, this is what it has happened and this is what the entire thing was about, right? And the idea is to not blame the other person or blame yourself. There's no right or wrong, and I often say this, it's always a matter of perspective when you have to decide what is right, what is wrong. So never get into that the other person was right or they were wrong in saying that. It's just a matter of perspective. From their perspective they could be right, and from your perspective they could be wrong. So the idea is to just look at observations wholly. So a small technique that all of you can actually use is to just write down everything that's in your head, what has happened on that particular day, and just write it down and then read it after a while. It would help you gather those observations. And I have got two comments. Let me just quickly go through them. How could non-violent communication be effectively applied to manage internal conflicts such as self-criticism and negative self-talk? All right. Shrita says, I see that the steps would require one to be calm and patient and willing to listen. Yeah, yeah, I think uh, that is very true when you're saying that. But I also feel that in real life, that will never be a situation. It's very difficult to reach that kind of situation because when you are in that conflict or when you're in that situation, your emotion will rise, your emotion will change. It's very difficult to be very calm, right? You